I always want to start that with Andrew's. Hello there, gentle viewers.
What's
What
that
I never
from?
do. Buffy.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh,
will tell
hello
you
there, gentle
The
viewers.
tale of the
Buffy.
vampires.
No, it's Buffy, Slayer of the Vampires.
Slayer of the vampire. Wait, that's my coffee. Why not?
No, I have the oat milk.
Hello. So today we are talking about episodes 4, 5, 6.
4, 5, 6. Yeah.
Which is it's grouped that way because this is Marianne and
No, it's grouped that way because we got lazy and we didn't do one last week.
but it worked out well because it groups naturally because of their relationship and how it develops, as in like they get back together and then they break up again.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm going to focus on my brain.
Connell's anxiety.
Connell's anxiety, but just like their development of their anxiety, like also like I think why I'm talking about this as well and focusing on it in terms of this part is like his anxiety around and her anxiety as well around their relationship, like just in terms of being viewed. That's a big
Oh,
thing.
actually, this is the thing. I would 100%. I can get on board with this. The
anxiety around that.
The being viewed is a huge thing that I actually, now that I think of, look at that bird is just in place.
Where?
There.
I can't see it.
Look.
Oh, is it near us?
Yeah. Look at it.
I actually like
There.
Oh yeah. Oh, they do
Whoa.
that by the coast a lot.
That's cool. He's not moving.
Like,
I mean, he is moving, but he's not flying anywhere.
he's static. He's just hovering.
That's
in the air.
class. Oh, I really want a video of that. Oh no, he's gone.
He's gone.
Anyway, okay, so yes, cool.
Yeah.
Right.
What? Just a brief recap of what happens. So they're kind of hanging out. Marianne is slowly, like it's just in the show, like they're doing this really nice touch, which I like, where they're not having dialogue. It's just like if the camera's holding on Marianne's face and you're watching the thoughts go on, then seeding that with small interactions between her and Gareth, where you see her distance herself more, so you're connecting the dots as she's thinking about Connell. And at the end of episode 4 she texts Connell, but she hasn't done in a while.
She's like DTF.
Yeah, she says that actually.
That's what she texts him.
That's what she texts
Yeah.
Marianne. Yeah, she says that all the time. And and start of episode 5 is him getting that text and calling her, and then him going into her social circle more, her breaking up with Gareth. Oh my god, I really want to talk about that party scene actually.
That kills me. The party scene.
So no, not the pool. The first party.
Yeah.
Not the pool party, the other party where she's just after breaking up with Gareth and she's like coming on to Connell, and
That's what I mean. That party kills me because why are they all dressed like that?
Okay.
They're meant to be 18-year-olds in college and they're all drinking wine and champagne and blah, blah, like Trinity heads. Is that really what they do? I really don't believe it is. Like maybe at some point they did find a fucking gaff, but like they weren't all sophisticated and blah, blah, blah. That's just a side note.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's not get into it. It's just a side note and annoys me. But yeah, let's talk about that.
yeah. Well, also I want to bring up the point that I think they actually, without saying it, they have moved up the timeline of the show to being more around our time, because we had this discussion during the week that at the time, like how Marianne dresses, Cristina was like, she's not wearing bodycons, we were all wearing bodycons, and I was like, I think it's more like my timeline or my time in college, and she was like, no, the time's thingy, and it's actually 2011 to 2015 in the book, but I think they actually moved up the time to being nowish because in school he's got like one of these phones. We did not have these phones.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and you forget about it because they're so used to it.
Fair.
We still had like Blackberries and like Nokia's
Flip phones and a flip phone.
phones. Yeah, so they moved it up, which is I'm like a bit happy.
So are
about.
college students more sophisticated now?
A bit more sophisticated. I mean, I am really impressed that she walks into that party, and she's goes to meet her friends, and then she's drunkenly searching for Connell, and Frank Ocean Nike is playing in the background, and I'm like, that's a great touch because I know exactly what year that is, and that's a great song. But yeah, those are some fucking sophisticated motherfuckers if they're playing Frank Ocean and they're 19 years age. But at the same time, the difference between us at 18, 19 in college and someone now, they had the internet for much longer, so they are way better dresses than we are when we were 13.
I don't know if you have been to Cork City on a night out when it's like rag week or something.
Have you seen the teenagers that are coming out of Mount St. Michael? Their
No.
dress sense is unreal.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, fair. I've been away. I'm a stranger. I'm a blow-in.
So yeah, she's hitting on him, and she's too drunk, and he's like not like this, which is nice. And
that is nice. Yeah.
Nice. I'm like, good lad.
Good boy.
Lad.
Yeah,
Good
not
lad.
like this. You're too drunk. Maybe tomorrow when you're not drunk
when
and
you're
you're
not
just
drunk,
hungover
and you know what
and
you
needed.
want. And then so blah blah blah, they're together, blah blah, and then I'm just clipping through this fast, not dismissing it. I'm just saying blah 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 because I'm an asshole. Anyways, that was a joke.
I love myself. I've been in therapy. I'm looking to love myself. Okay.
Yeah, and then this episode 4, 5, 6. So episode 6 then is them more. I think that's the episode that he tells her that he loves her, but it's also simultaneously the same episode where everything goes to shit. And
yeah, so when we were talking about what we talked about today, the anxiety thing, I think. So this feeds back into where I think for some reason I kind of blocked out the rest of the book so I was very much judging them by the first couple of episodes. But remember I was talking like, why is he so ashamed of Marianne? And I think it becomes apparent that he's not very ashamed. Like he wasn't necessarily ashamed of Marianne at all that entire time, but highly, it's something to do with him. Like you can see that when she's like, when he like gets pissed off because your man Jamie touches her, she's like, well, you never touch me. Does that mean that nobody else can? Unless
there's 6 doors between us and other people.
Yeah. So you get the sense that, oh, he's super, super, super private, but like
not just private, but it's not like there's privacy and there's like ravaging insecurity and anxiety.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like it's ruling him. I mean, so much. It's not just like you can be private, but that is like
it's and it's very damaging to a I think, we were talking yesterday about wanting to be seen, and it is a thing that when you are in a relationship, you want to like kind of broadcast it, like that's why we get married and stuff. It's kind of like, hey everybody, we're together. Like I don't know why it needs to, like, for the thing to exist, you want other people to see you be the unit. I don't know why it's a thing.
Like I was saying, we were talking about this yesterday, and I was like, there's an intricate part of human behavior, not just human behavior, but our existence, that for some reason, I don't know why, it's something that came up that I learned in therapy. We really just need to be witnessed as human beings. So no, not that. Just like witnessing, it's a funny thing. And
I was saying, no, it is just
that,
this as well. Like it is literally selfies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like people want to be seen. Like it is a thing. And like I know when I was growing up, and like you want someone to accept your relationship status on, you want to have that joint relationship status on Facebook. There's something about the public nature of a relationship that makes it a relationship. It's almost like when there's two of you together in a private room, it's not really a relationship until you're in the public.
Oh, I'm not going to agree with that.
But otherwise, it's a secret thing. Like there's something about being in the public.
But see, the thing is, like, I don't really agree with that, because you the other person. There's the two of you. There's a, you know.
Yes, but your relationship is also with your relationship as, you know, your dynamic as a couple also depends on other people seeing you as a couple.
Well, it's your relationship. Then you were talking about less about the public and more about your society and your community. And
yeah,
those
so
very different
like
things.
I think we're getting back, but we like it. We're getting back to why is he so private? Like why is he so private?
It's definitely like a shame blocker. If he's a lot of shame, that's for himself. Like that inhibits. That seems. I'm just gonna put up a thing that like, okay, he is a lot of shame, and the shame, blocks, and it doesn't allow him to allow himself to be seen. I'm kind of phrasing that badly.
Yeah, I get what you mean though.
He's still like hiding myself. Oh my god, and I totally actually forgot about the one big thing about those episodes that was amazing and was really beautiful. So it's before Connell and Marianne get back together, and it will make sense that I'm bringing up now. And they're hanging out in Marianne's apartment
room,
and he apologizes for not bringing her to the Debs and how he treated her, and he talks about his life and living, and he's like I think I have a lot of anxiety around these things, and he says he's like I think about my life here and my life back home, and I can't connect it. He was like, people here, they're going around and they're talking and they're doing it with such ease, and I feel like I'm trying on 100 different versions of myself.
Yeah,
like that really like caught into me, that it's such a powerful scene and moment.
That was such a great scene.
Yeah,
I loved that scene.
So good.
It was really like emotional. It was a really emotional scene. Like her hurt. You can see her hurt, and then his like kind of like crippling, like
his pain and shame for creating that hurt, and then him revealing that part of himself. You know, it's like, yeah, it was very, 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 very powerful.
Yeah.
So like,
I think then towards the same like privacy and like, I think it comes back to my point as well in the first video. Check out the first video, which is really long, but whatever. I'll timestamp it so you'll see where under the video, so we'll see where we talked about this. But it's his inability to communicate comes to the fore in these episodes as well. So they communicate in this episode where you're saying like in the scene, but they're not together, right?
Yeah.
So they're able to communicate all the time about shit when they're not together. They're able to analyze themselves and apologize and communicate, but when they're actually together, they're unable to do it.
See this, and that's funny because like it really like that's actually really kind of reassured me about my confusion around whether they communicated or not.
Yeah,
because I was so confused about it. You were bringing up such good points, but I was like, but they also weirdly
and I think that I blocked out that part where they did communicate, but when in terms of the relationship as a couple, they don't. But in terms of the relationship as a whole, they do when they're friends.
Yeah.
Or friends, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the technique as well at the end of that episode 4, is it 4, 5, 6, 4, 3? Which one?
What
5, 4.
What scene are you on about? Sorry.
In the pool.
That's episode 6.
So in episode 6, I think they did this so beautifully.
Are you going to steal my thing?
Oh,
I think you are.
No, I don't mean to. But where he wants to tell her, I want to stay in your house and sleep over.
I'm watching you.
Okay. I want to stay in your house and sleep over. And then he puts his arm around her or whatever. And then she closes her eyes.
Oh yeah, you're not stealing my thing. You're talking about something else.
No, yeah. So he's trying to tell her like, oh, I want to stay in your house, you know, and she's like, what do you want to tell me? And he's like, nothing. And then he begins to cry, but in that second,
but they don't say anything, and in the show they don't say anything.
No. Like they're like, he's like, Marianne, and she's like, yeah, and he's like, nothing.
Well,
it's fine.
And continue.
And then what happens is he begins to cry, but she closes her eyes because she's enjoying having him touch her in public. So, and then she opens her eyes again and looks at him, and it looks fine. But in that moment, she misses his, like, if she had opened her eyes in that moment, she would have seen what was happening.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. And because in that moment, they're like in two separate worlds completely, because they do not communicate. And it's like his privacy with her also extends to his privacy with his own feelings. He keeps it trapped up. And also in another scene, he like tries to say something to her, and she starts kissing him, and they have sex, and then she was like, "Oh, I almost thought I had feelings for you there."
I was so
and then they start laughing, and he was like, "You should just repress them. That's what I do." And they joke about it, but that is what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're trying to like not. They have an inability to communicate. So I think
that it's really interesting as well, just about that scene. It's like he's in the pool, and it's like that moment where he swims over to her, and like that's him actually like he's listened to her, what she said, that he never touches her or shows her any bit of affection in public, and that's like his deliberate decision to do so. But that actual specific moment there really struck me. It was really beautiful, that he's like in the pool, and like it's one of the most accurate portrayals of like what it's like to be just living day to day in anxiety, where he's like in the pool and like he's looking out at the party, and like the way they designed the sound, and the way even just the amount of focus that they had with the camera and the lens puller, like it just portrayed like that there's just this sheen between him and the world, and that he's not really there. He's just a little bit detached, and it's just so wonderfully done, and it's like that's incredible, and that's like something that might just go under the radar, but I really think needed to be noted, and it's like just so I just thought that was incredible. They do that quite a lot as well, where they do like zoom up to their faces, and it kind of conveys like, oh, they're so in their own head here. So I think that's kind of, we're wrapped up. We won't keep you here for 17 minutes. No, there's one big thing. Okay, sorry. I thought you were stealing from me, and I was like, what are you doing? That was my thing. I'm joking. So them breaking up, you don't see the breakup at the end of episode 6. All you see is, you don't know what's happened. Like, she's in the kitchen and she's crying, and he's just after running out of the house. You don't know what happened, because they don't actually know what happened. This is like the big moment where they really needed to communicate, and communication broke down. His anxiety had been building about asking her to move in for the summer all episode, and he couldn't do it, and that accumulates in the pool scene when he's like crying, and it's that moment, and I thought that was so good. It was like just a really excellent ploy to communicate something that like you might have over verbalized trying to explain if you'd actually just shot the scene. It was just a really elegant way of doing it. I think for the storyline, however, the having to go back to like Sally really had to try and find a way to break them up in that moment, and I think it's a really silly way to break them up. Like, that was he has to go all the way back to Sligo. Yeah, they couldn't see each other over summer. I thought that was a bit silly, that's how she broke them up. But like, that's kind of like how anxiety works. It targets the most like things that that you're like, oh, I have anxiety about like going for a job interview, or like I have anxiety about starting this relationship. Anxiety kind of sneaks in ways that you're like, why are you fucking this up? It's like so basic. So that's why. See, I never had that. I never really suffered from anxiety, and like also relationships, I didn't suffer from that either. So maybe I just don't know. See, I've had that. Oh yeah, you've had relationships. You've seen relationships. No, I've had like three
relationships.
I'm like Connell, so I didn't tell anyone. Well, my friends knew, but like was it 3? It was 2 or 3. The biggest one, the one where I fell in love, I didn't. My mother found out when I was breaking up with him because I was very unwell mentally, and I was like, I need to sort my shit out because But I have been in that situation where it's like.
I mean, I understand.
Anxiety.
I understand. Yeah, I understand that part of the anxiety. Maybe not in the relationship part, but I certainly understand that, like, having to tell someone something or wanting to say something to someone and being so crippled with fear that you can't say it, and like would prefer that the thing be, you know, to be without the thing that you want, but instead of saying the thing that you need to say. Do you know, it's actually, I literally only did that the other day with something that actually I was talking in the last video. Same thing. I was just like, I really want this thing to happen. I'm having crippling anxiety over talking to my friend about it, so I'm just gonna avoid. You know, so yeah, I have had that, but maybe not in relationships, because you know, but whatever.
I think actually the big thing that is kind of coming up for me thinking about this now when we're talking about it is like, maybe just from like following a lot of like psychologists on Instagram. Really good tool to do, by the way. I really recommend it, because they just do these amazing posts where they're like teaching you about like
follow us.
Attachment theory, and you're just like, they're just all these really handy tools. But actually, like,
holistic psychologist is a good one.
She's a good one. Yeah, there's some really amazing ones. We'll link in the description. But they actually, a big thing that is like, sometimes when people are in relationships, I know this has happened to me, where actually there's more of a chance of like intimacy because of like past experiences in your life. The closer you get to intimacy and love and connection, actually the more likely, or what will happen is, you actually will shut down, and it'll be kind of like an almost like fight or flight reaction in a way, because you're like, this is a place where I've been before and it went horribly, horribly wrong, and or you know, your connection wasn't met, or it was laughed at, or there's like so many different ways that like it went wrong or whatever. But that as you go deeper into the relationship, your communication breaks down so much, because you're actually getting locked out of it. Like, it's all to do with attachment theories.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm explaining it really.
I think that, like, I've experienced, I think that that's why actually relationships like that start out so amazing, and they're like blah 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 and it's great and blah blah, because you don't really need to deal with heavy shit earlier in the relationship. But then when you get into it and it starts getting more intimate and blah blah blah, what happens is you do have to start dealing with crap that comes up. And when you decide not to deal with it, then that builds and builds and builds, and then it, like, there's a break. Totally.
That's definitely a blocker that blocks the connection, you know, between, you know, anything unresolved a lot of the time does just, like, it sits between you, and that stops that then inhibits your connection. That's why the communication thing is such a huge. That's why I was saying they have terrible communication, because in the moment the proof is in the pudding. In the moment when they needed to speak and to clarify shit with each other, they didn't. They heard different things, and then they broke up for no good reason. So, you know, it, like, they were talking about the stuff and blah blah, and then, you know, but yeah. Oh, another thing we haven't talked about is actually, which is, they've actually focused on it more. So I'm just going to link it this way. It's the the 4th episode, when Marianne and Connell's giving Marianne a lift to the party, and she starts talking all this crap about herself. And she's like, oh, I'm cold and all this, and it's all the stuff that she was told about herself in school, and all the stuff that, like, she's internalized, and she says it as a joke, but like that shit's still there, and she's in college.
But you also wear like because my therapist actually asked me to read and this, and she asked me the other day, who do I identify with? And I was like, both of them. I identified with Connell and Marianne so strongly. Actually, I was Marianne in secondary school, and I'm Connell in college, but I'm also Marianne in college as well. Like, when you were told all these things, what happens is when you have created, which is what Marianne has done, this kind of outer shell, like kind of tough exterior outer shell, like badasses, like Peggy says, like rips people apart or whatever. You wear all of those bad things with pride. Those are badges. Oh, I'm cold, and then you kind of tell people, oh, I'm cold, and I'm
well, that's your
intimidating
shield.
Or whatever, and people are like, oh yeah, sure, and you're like, yeah, I'm it's like it becomes your personality.
Yeah.
You think it's your personality. Yeah.
But she goes home to Sligo for a weekend, and there's a really, this is actually a really big thing. It starts to, they actually focus a little bit back on Marianne's family life, and there's a dinner. I don't know why there's a dinner, and so I
think it's her dad's.
Her relatives are talking and are there, and they're talking, and they're like, I think her aunt is like, oh, when are you going visiting your sister, Alan? And like Marianne freezes, like you can see the fear on her face, and both of them freeze, but she's like afraid. And then the dinner continues, and then I think it's her uncle or the man that's they don't really specify who they are.
His uncle. Yeah.
And he's like, your father would be proud of you. And all three of them, like Marianne, Alan, and the mother, they all are like, they receive that like, really? They like, as if like they don't know what the hell pride would be from their father, because they probably never, that was never expressed to them.
No, he beat them.
Yeah, and then there's a scene in the kitchen. She's cleaning up, and Alan's attacking her now, and she kind of snaps and defends herself, and he like gets a sponge and squeezes the water over her hair and like throws the sponge down and walks out. And her mother was at the door, and so Marianne turns and sees her mother, and her mother, like a robot, just turns and walks back at the door. And there's actually a really strong scene where Marianne's mother is dropping her to the bus, and they actually discuss Alan. And I was like, this is so interesting that they wrote this in. I actually really liked that detail, that they brought this in to the show, rather that wasn't in the book.
Well, I think they had to kind of like explain it to the viewer a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas you could see it in the book. In reality, in that kind of dynamic, they potentially like in the book, they would have never had that conversation, such a frank conversation. But I think that was a tool to explain the relationship, like what was kind of going on in Marianne's head and stuff, to the viewer.
Yeah.
Rather than like, yeah.
And it also, like, because in the book, like, you don't see classic West Cork accent.
We'll wrap it up there. I think we have to do a whole thing on Alan. Alan is one like that fascinates me.
But I was going to say something that I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, so what they do in the show is that they show that with that conversation that they have, Marianne and her mother, they actually get across that her mother is actually a victim in this dynamic. Whereas if you read it, or I read it in the book, that I was like, her mother's a villain, and her mother is complicit in this dynamic, and
she's also a victim.
But she's also a victim, and she's
That's
like,
true, actually.
what do you expect me to do? She's
Yeah.
like, I'm doing the best she can, and it's a really,
that's true. Actually, they do that, and that is like, I think when you are I think it addresses maybe like, why didn't you leave? Why don't you leave? It's like, well, that's not what happens in abusive situations.
yeah, and like she was like, what am I gonna do? Throw him out?
Yeah,
you know, it's like it's very.
I think the Marianne's mother and Alan, I would love to get into separately. Not, I think it is a really important part that isn't as focused in the series, but it is.
They might bring it up a bit more
Yeah.
again in the later episodes. We're just as we're going along, you know, this is what we're looking at, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so the next episodes are of that have already been released is Jamie being an absolute dick, if you've seen it, and I think
What do you expect from someone?
it was like honestly so uncomfortable. Wait until you watch it. I was literally like this.
But it's funny because like I was talking to one of my work colleagues about it, and she was like, I thought he was grand, and I was like, see, I've met people like him in real life, and I read the book and I knew exactly who that was.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so I knew, I was like, I was reading his character in the book, and I was like, I know how actually fucking awful this is, that when it's going to be portrayed as a show, people are going to be like, what? But I was like, oh god, they're just like and as well Peggy, I think that Jamie and Peggy are
they're a triangle. They're like the drama triangle. Oh yeah, totally. She is a fucking oh my god, I just had a revelation. Peggy is her mother, Jamie is like her father. And she's keeping her in that the drama triangle there. Okay, we'll get into that next time. Okay, thank you for viewing. It's only been 31 minutes this time. Got it in.
Way more concise.
Way more concise.
Hopefully better audio quality as well, definitely.
Yeah, this is a much better. And I can the other one was, even the picture, you can see us better. Look, we're pretty, right?
I've got spots and I'm not afraid to show it.
Right? Yeah. Okay, I'll pan, show you the colour of the sea here. It's beautiful, and maybe I'll get some floating birds that I can like put in between all the shots as well. It's pretty nice. Okay.